Buddha Jim, you almost had me there. I actually thought for an instant that maybe, if you define state as any institution, the purpose of which is to protect private property, then I'm not against all states. But the problem with your reasoning is that a state is oh so much more than simple defense of private property. You see, you seem to be confusing cause and effect. All of those quotes that you're so fond of don't say that the definition of state is any institution for the defense of private property. What they do say is, we want a state, the cause, in order to protect private property, the effect. Now, so far as I know, we almost all agree, that is, almost all anarchist socialists and anarchist capitalists agree that some property is legitimate and some property is not legitimate. But come on, we all know what states are. They're those big public institutions that claim to have the right to control what individuals do within a large geographic region, regardless of who has possession of small plots of land and physical objects within their boundaries. What anarcho-capitalists suggest is that maybe we can come up with some other means of defending legitimate private property without defending illegitimate private property, and without resorting to the creation of those big public institutions that claim the right to control what goes on within a large geographic region. In other words, without creating a state. Now, I'll also point out that all of those quotes that you're so fond of actually don't even talk about the state. They talk about government. Am I to conclude then that because you, Buddha Jim, you don't oppose government, then you're guilty by association of being a defender of this evil private property? I don't think so. But that's the exact line of thinking that you use against me. Now, Buddha Jim, you seem like a nice guy and an intelligent guy and obviously experienced in discussing and debating these ideas. So I find it seriously hard to believe that you're completely unfamiliar with a method of debating in which you ask questions that you already know the answer to. Do you really think I asked whether anarchist socialism is inherently pacifist because I know nothing about it? No. I asked the question because I already knew the answer, and I feel that that answer bolsters my position. By the way, the question I asked was not whether anarchism is pacifist. I asked whether anarchist socialism is pacifist. And as you and I both know, the answer is no. This supports my position because if it is legitimate for individuals to defend themselves and their personal property or possessions, and if individuals have freedom of association, then private defensive organizations will naturally arise. Okay, you say in your video also that I talked about secretly defining our terms. No, Buddha Jim, you misquote me. I talked about secretly redefining your terms in the middle of a discussion. I'll illustrate with a joke. Jokester's question. If we call a tail a leg, how many legs does a dog have? Well, the naive answer is, well, 5. The jokester's answer is, no, 4, because if we call a tail a leg, well, that doesn't make it 1. Now, the reason that joke works is because the jokester is using 2 different meanings for call. Initially, the victim of the joke thinks that what the jokester means is, if we redefine the word leg to include tails, how many legs does a dog have? And that's exactly what the jokester intends for the victim to think. But then the punchline comes, in which the jokester uses a definition that is intentionally different than what was understood by the victim. That's what I'm talking about. Redefining your terms in the middle of a conversation, without explicitly doing so, doing it secretly. Now, you say in your video that anarchists are socialists, but then you add, up until Murray Rothbard. In other words, it is simply not true that anarchists are and have always been socialists. Oh, they all called them socialists up until Murray Rothbard. But the roots of anarcho-capitalism go back way before Murray Rothbard. The roots of anarcho-capitalism are in the ideas of people like Lysander Spooner, Benjamin Tucker, and even, it might pain you to hear this, but it's the truth, even Pierre-Joseph Proudhon. Yes, Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, the creator of that oft-quoted proclamation that property is theft, also said, in Theory of Property, that, quote, property is the only power that can act as a counterweight to the state, end quote. Lysander Spooner, whose ideas were published in Liberty, that socialist publication edited by Benjamin Tucker, said, quote, the fact is that the government, like a highwayman, says to a man, your money or your life. And many, if not most, taxes are paid under the compulsion of that threat. End quote. Yes, the socialist, Lysander Spooner, railed against taxes. Taxes which so many socialists, even anarchist socialists, are in favor of for redistribution of wealth schemes. Benjamin Tucker, the editor of the socialist publication Liberty, said, quote, and this is the anarchistic definition of the state, the embodiment of the principle of invasion in an individual or a band of individuals assuming to act as representatives or masters of the entire people within a given area. End quote. An interesting definition, don't you think? Very different than yours. Now, Buddha Jim, I'm not accusing you of not knowing what you're talking about, but if you're unfamiliar with these quotes, then perhaps it would behoove you to learn more about the history of anarchism.